cooked for her mother every single day. She washed her clothes, managed her medications, and never missed a beat. To anyone looking in from the outside, Candace Craig was the kind of daughter every aging parent hopes to have. Devoted, present, sacrificing her own life to care for someone who needed her. But on the night of May the 23rd, 2023, something shifted. Her elderly mother, 71-year-old Margaret Craig, confronted her about money that had been going missing from her bank account for months. Hard-earned retirement savings. Money she had worked her whole life to protect. That conversation was the last thing Margaret Craig ever said. By the time the sun came up the next morning, she was gone. Not missing. Not wandering. Gone. And the woman who had dedicated years to keeping her alive was the one who had taken her life. What followed over the next 10 days was one of the most disturbing cover-up attempts you will ever hear about. A chainsaw bought on Amazon, a backyard grill, 67 pieces, and a 19-year-old girl who knew everything but said nothing. This is the full story of what happened to Margaret Craig. But before we get into it, if you are new to this channel, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell so you never miss a case. We cover real stories, real crimes, real people, and we do not hold back. This is Cases Decoded. To understand what happened in that house in Maryland, you need to understand who Margaret Craig was. Her family knew her as Auntie Joyce. That tells you something straight away. Not just mom, not just grandma. Auntie Joyce, the kind of name that comes with warmth, with big hugs, with someone always having food ready when you walk through the door. She was 71 years old. She had spent her life working hard and building something for herself and her family. By the time she got older, she had a healthy retirement fund saved up. She had security. She had earned it. But her health had started to slow her down. She had suffered multiple strokes. She was managing diabetes. Her family noticed she was showing signs of early dementia, becoming forgetful, confused, withdrawn. She was resistant to seeing doctors, so she had never been formally diagnosed. But the people around her could see it happening. That left her vulnerable. And that vulnerability meant she needed someone close by. Someone she trusted. Someone who could manage her day-to-day and make sure she was safe. That person was her daughter, 44-year-old Candace Craig. Candace had moved into her mother's home along with her own children, 19-year-old Celia, a 12-year-old daughter, and Candace's boyfriend. On paper, it looked like a family coming together under one roof to support someone they loved. Candace was the carer. She handled everything. And in the beginning, maybe that was exactly what it was. But somewhere along the line, the role of carer became something else entirely. It became access. It became opportunity. And Margaret Craig, trusting and unwell, had no idea what was happening right under her own roof. Here is where the story takes its first dark turn. For months, possibly longer, Candace had been stealing from her own mother. Not just small amounts here and there. Systematic, planned, regular transfers going into Candace's account. Purchases from services Margaret had never signed up for, delivery apps, ride apps, subscriptions she knew nothing about. And bigger purchases too. Expensive items charged to Margaret's name. At some point, investigators would pull the bank records and find a pattern that told a very clear story. There were calls made to Margaret's bank, a woman claiming to be Margaret Craig, requesting approvals for large purchases. One of them was a pair of collectible sneakers worth $211. The voice on those calls? Not Margaret. But then there were other calls. Different ones. A woman whose voice was older, shakier, clearly distressed. The real Margaret Craig, calling her own bank and asking why money she did not recognize was leaving her account. Asking for help. Trying to understand what was happening to her money. She was being robbed. And the person doing it was sitting across from her at the dinner table every night. It got worse. Candace had reportedly enlisted her youngest daughter, a 12-year-old child, to make calls to the bank requesting new debit cards. She was pulling her own kids into the scheme. Celia, the 19-year-old, later confirmed to investigators what had been going on in that house. She said, "My grandmother and my mother were arguing about the money situation. My grandmother thought my mother was stealing from her. Sometimes my grandmother would go check and ask, "Where's the money?" Margaret knew. She had figured it out. And once she did, she was not going to stay quiet about it. On the night of May the 23rd, 2023, she confronted Candace. We do not know exactly what was said in that room. We do not know how long it went on or how loud it got, but we know how it ended. Candace Craig suffocated her mother with a trash bag. Margaret Craig, 71 years old, already fragile from strokes and illness, never had a chance. And then Candace closed the bedroom door and went to sleep. The next morning, 19-year-old Celia woke up for work as normal. Before she left the house, she checked on her grandmother, same as she usually did. But something was different. She found Margaret's remains inside a blue storage bin in the bedroom. Think about that for a moment. She was 19 years old, and what she saw in that room that morning would follow her for the rest of her life. She went to her mother, and Candace, calmly, without breaking, asked her daughter to help her make the body disappear. The days that followed were some of the most disturbing in this entire case. Candace went online and bought a chainsaw. She purchased it through Amazon under her mother's name using her mother's money. She also ordered 13-gallon trash bags, paper towels, and a plastic drop cloth, all charged to the same account. Margaret Craig's retirement savings were now being used to buy the tools that would erase every trace of Margaret Craig. Together, Candace and Celia used the chainsaw to cut up Margaret's body, more than 67 separate pieces. On May the 27th, 4 days after the killing, a neighbor spotted thick black smoke rising from the backyard of the house. They called the fire department. By the time firefighters arrived, the flames had already been put out. No signs of anything suspicious, just a quiet house in a quiet neighborhood. What the neighbor did not know was that Candace had been trying to burn parts of her mother's body on the outdoor grill. She had placed pieces of chicken alongside the remains to try to mask the smell of what was actually burning. It did not work. The smell was still there. The remains were still there, now packed into trash bags and stored in the basement. And within days, the rest of the family would come looking for answers. Margaret Craig had not answered her phone in a week. That was not like her. Her family knew her health was fragile. They knew emergencies could happen fast. So on May the 31st, 8 days after the killing, one of her nephews drove to the house. He knocked. Nobody answered. He called the police and messaged Candace at the same time. His message was direct. "I am on the phone with the police. They are doing a wellness check. Sorry to scare you, but this is not normal." Candace sent back a single thumbs up. When she eventually came to the door, she told the family that Margaret had gone to stay with a friend. She said she was not going to report anything to the police until 72 hours had passed. She was calm, steady, completely in control of how this was being presented. The responding officer took her at her word. Margaret was an adult. There was no immediate evidence of anything wrong. He left, but the family was not satisfied. 2 days later, June the 2nd, another relative called 911 again. Officers responded to the address at 1:37 in the afternoon. Candace answered the door. She let them in. She cooperated. She sat with investigators and gave them the story she had been rehearsing, that her mother had gone to a friend's house, that she sometimes wandered, that this was not the first time she had disappeared without warning. And then investigators went to have a conversation with her daughter Celia. They sat down separately. They wanted to see if the stories matched up. Celia said she last saw her grandmother on Tuesday morning, May the 30th, just before leaving for work at around 11:30. She said she checked on her, that Margaret seemed to be sleeping, and that she headed out. Candace said she last saw her mother the night before, Monday, May the 29th. She said they had grilled food together, hamburgers and chicken. She took a plate to Margaret's room. That was the last time she saw her. Their timelines overlapped closely enough not to immediately contradict each other. But investigators were watching more than just the words. Candace kept shifting in her seat during the interview. She kept touching her neck, pressing her hand against her lower back. She had visited the emergency room about a month earlier for back pain. But the question forming in the room was a different one entirely. Had she aggravated that injury recently? Had something physically demanding caused the pain to flare up again? Investigators said nothing. They filed it away, because by that point they had already found what they were looking for. You do not need to be trained in crime investigation to know what a decomposing body smells like once you have encountered it. It is not a smell you confuse with anything else. It fills a space. It tells you immediately that something is very wrong. Officers did not need to search long. The smell coming from the basement was unmistakable. They found the carpet had been pulled up from part of the floor. There were trash bags stacked in a corner. Inside those bags were the remains of Margaret Craig. More than 67 pieces. When investigators returned to Celia and confronted her with what they had found, the 19-year-old began to break down. She admitted she had smelled something in the basement the day before while washing clothes. She had noticed the carpet was gone. She had known, somewhere deep down, that things were not right, but she had not said a word, because her mother had told her not to. And over the next several hours, the full picture finally began to emerge. Celia described the sequence of events starting from the night of May the 23rd. She had been in her room when she heard her grandmother scream. It was not the first time she had heard Margaret cry out. Her health issues sometimes caused sudden pain, so Celia stayed where she was. She did not get up. The next morning, she found the blue bin in the bedroom. She went to her mother, and that is when Candace told her what had happened and what they were going to do about it. Celia was asked by investigators, why? Why did she help? Why did she not walk out of that house and call the police? Her answer was simple. Because my mother asked me to. She was 19 years old. Her mother had told her what to do her entire life. And in the worst moment either of them had ever faced, she did not know how to do anything except follow those instructions one more time. That does not make what she did right, but it explains how a teenager ends up helping to conceal the murder of her own grandmother. Candace Craig sat across from investigators and maintained her story. Her mother had left. She did not know where she had gone. She had reported nothing to the police because 72 hours had not yet passed. She was a caring daughter. She had done everything right. She was visibly uncomfortable. Physically, from the back pain she had clearly made worse over the past 10 days. But also in the way she spoke. The answers were smooth in places and then suddenly too careful. The emotion was there when it needed to be and absent at the moments when you would expect it most. Investigators showed her what they had found in the basement. Candace denied it. She tried to redirect suspicion toward Celia. She tried to involve another of her daughters. She had an explanation for everything until she did not. The chainsaw purchase was in Margaret's name. The trash bags, the drop cloth, the paper towels, all bought after May the 23rd, all charged to Margaret's account. Even the Amazon delivery, ordered while her mother was already dead. The bank records told the story that Candace had been telling all along. Just not the story she wanted anyone to hear. Margaret Craig's retirement savings had been drained piece by piece. And when Margaret finally confronted her daughter about it, Candace made a choice. Not to confess. Not to ask for forgiveness. She made the choice to make sure her mother could never tell anyone what she had discovered. Both Candace and Celia were charged in connection with the murder of Margaret Craig. When the case went to trial, Celia had already made her decision. She pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact. In exchange for her cooperation and testimony against her mother, she was sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation. She was also required to complete psychiatric and psychological evaluation, along with a drug and alcohol assessment. Following the case, she went to live with her grandfather, Margaret's husband, in Washington, D.C., while she worked to find permanent housing. She was 19 years old when all of this began. She will carry it for the rest of her life. In the courtroom, Celia took the stand against her mother. She told the jury everything. The argument about the money. The night of May the 23rd. The blue bin. The chainsaw. The grill. The smoke rising from the backyard on May the 27th while the neighborhood carried on around them as if nothing was happening. She told them about the phone calls to the bank. Her grandmother's frightened voice asking for help, and a different woman's voice pretending to be her. She told them about the 12-year-old sister being used to call in for new debit cards. She told them what her mother had said to her that morning, and she told them why she had agreed. Candace Craig did not accept any of it. She sat through the trial maintaining her innocence, deflecting, redirecting. But the evidence had already spoken. The bank records, the Amazon order history, the chainsaw registered in her dead mother's name. The remains of 67 pieces found in the basement of the home where she lived. The neighbors' call about the smoke. And the testimony of her own daughter, sitting just feet away from her in the same courtroom. The jury deliberated, and then they came back, guilty, on all counts. The prosecution addressed the court before sentencing. They spoke about who Margaret Craig had been before any of this happened. She was someone who worked hard all her life. She was providing for her grown daughter who was living with her, her grandchildren, and she even allowed her daughter's boyfriend to live in the home. A giving, caring, loving, compassionate and understanding woman. She was killed, exploited by her own daughter. And make no mistake, Candace Craig absolutely committed this crime, and she is now being held accountable for it. Candace Craig was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She will not leave that prison. She will grow old inside a cell, the same way her mother should have been allowed to grow old in the home she had worked a lifetime to build. Today, Margaret Craig's family continues to live with the aftermath. Not just the grief of losing her, but the specific, complicated grief of knowing the person who was supposed to protect her most is the one who ended her life. That she spent her final weeks afraid and confused, watching her money disappear, not fully understanding who was taking it from her. And that, in the end, all she did was ask a question. That question cost her everything. There is something about this case that is hard to shake. It is not just the violence. Violence, as awful as it is something the mind can eventually process. What is harder to sit with is the years that came before the killing. The slow, quiet theft of a woman who was already struggling. The way Candace looked at her mother every single day, cooked for her, helped her, presented herself to the world as her protector, while she was systematically taking from her. Margaret Craig trusted her daughter completely. She had no reason not to. Candace was right there, every day, doing all the things a good daughter does. And the entire time, she was draining the account, pulling money out in small enough amounts to stay under the radar for as long as possible. And when Margaret finally put it together, when she finally saw it clearly enough to say something, that was when she became a problem to be solved rather than a mother to be answered. The burning, the chainsaw, the trash bags, the grill with the chicken placed alongside human remains to hide the smell. 10 days of living in that house as if everything was normal. Letting family members call and not answering. Sending a thumbs up to a nephew who was standing outside with the police. That is not panic. That is planning. That is someone who believed, at least for a while, that she was going to get away with it. She did not, because ultimately, the truth does not stay buried. Not in the basement. Not in trash bags. Not on a grill at the back of a Maryland yard on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Margaret Craig deserved better. She deserved a daughter who protected her instead of one who stole from her, silenced her, and then spent 10 days trying to make her disappear. She was 71 years old. She had strokes and diabetes and the early signs of a disease that was starting to take her memory. She needed someone in her corner. She thought she had that person. She was wrong. That is the full story of what happened to Margaret Craig. A woman who spent her whole life giving to the people around her, and who, in the end, was taken by the one person she never should have had to fear. Candace Craig is now serving life without the possibility of parole. Celia is rebuilding her life under supervised probation, carrying the weight of a decision she made at 19 that she cannot undo. And Margaret's family is left to pick up the pieces of something that should never have happened in the first place. If the story moved you, if it made you think, let us know in the comments below. Tell us what you think about the sentence. Tell us what you think about Celia's role in all of this. We read every single comment, and your thoughts genuinely shape the conversations we have on this channel. And if you have not already, hit that like button, leave a comment, and make sure you are subscribed to Cases Decoded. We cover the cases that matter. The ones that are hard to talk about. The ones that tell us something real about the world we live in. We will see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.